Welcome to Waking Up America, the Not Morning Show. Today's news: the Supreme Court gives a stay of execution on Title 42. The UN argues that green electric cars are racist, and almost 40% of college students identify as gay. Let's talk about this while we still can. I am joined here today by my co-host, the half-assed libertarian Devin Adler, and I am the conservative voice of the night. My name is Alexander Graves. My co-host is also a Zoomer. I am not, so this does give us a little interesting back and forth here. I'm a boomer. Boomer's a state of mind, definitely a boomer. If you enjoy this content, please follow us on Twitter at America Wake Up. And before we get into the story here, if you guys would like to support our content, please step over to buymeacoffee.com/wakeup. You can buy a single coffee, or if you'd like, you can subscribe on there as well. So, first story of the day here. Supreme Court orders Trump-era Title 42 immigration policy to continue, and Gorsuch sides with the liberal justices. He has done this a couple times. His reasoning on this, I'm a little on the fence on it, but let's get into it here. So the Supreme Court sided with a group of Republican states asking that Title 42 immigration policy remain in place till the court can hear it in February. So a vote of 5-4 with Justice Neil Gorsuch siding with the liberal wing. The lawsuit was filed by Republican attorney generals from 19 states, led by Texas, and they were protesting the end of the Trump-era policy on the basis that it would result in a massive wave of illegal crossings at the border, which we have seen the results of on the border as it is being flooded. We covered this in a previous video as well. Just to recap what Title 42 is, Title 42 has been called the Remain in Mexico policy, as it allows the U.S. government to deport the migrants that are essentially coming across the border who are applying for asylum back to Mexico rather than allowing them to stay in the United States while their applications are processed. And critics say that the migrants whose applications are rejected often ignore orders from law enforcement and stay in the U.S. illegally. Something that we know about these people: when ICE catches these people and they release them into the country, more often than not, they do not come back to court to respond. They just escape into the country. So this Title 42 is a good policy. I don't think anyone entering the United States or seeking asylum in the United States should just be allowed to come in without first filing for asylum and seeing if it's approved or not, especially from the countries that they're coming from. So back into the article here. This is kind of where it gets a little interesting. So Gorsuch's decision was based on the fact that the current border crisis is not a COVID crisis, which technically he's true. In his dissent, he wrote, "And courts should not be in the business of perpetuating administrative edicts designed for one emergency only because the elected officials have failed to address a different emergency." He added, "We are a court of law, not policymakers of last resort." So my first snapshot response to this, to hearing this court decision was, great, Gorsuch betrayed us again. Not really surprising here, but when you actually delve into it, I don't necessarily disagree, because I don't want the courts to be able to just push forward administrative edicts like this. But there's also the other part of this, which is the Obama-Biden administration. Obama's never really left. Has essentially kept us in this COVID emergency state, which has allowed them to push through insane orders and emergency orders throughout. So the sooner we can get out of this narrative that we're in a COVID emergency, the better, which it does seem like there may be something coming down the pipe on that soon, which we'll probably cover in the next video. But your opinions on this decision?
Ultimately, Supreme Court W, in my opinion. The reason listed why Gorsuch voted that way, ultimately he's right. It's not really the court's place. It's kind of similar to why I got in a lot of fights with some of my leftist friends. That was like, yeah, I support Roe v. Wade being overturned, which is something, or I support it, being overturned. Something we can get into a little bit later about the abortion debate, not something I want to talk about now, but how it relates specifically to the court, is the reason given for why Roe v. Wade should be overturned was because it's a state's issue and not...
is what it was a bad law was basically what they said.
Yeah, exactly. It was a state's issue, not a federal issue, and ultimately the court was right about that. So I think this is another Supreme Court W.
I agree. I think overall extending Title 42, or not expanding, extending it to February, even though it is a little out of their purview, is the right thing to do to the country. But it speaks volumes to the fact that this administration is doing nothing about this, and we have absolutely no political power in Congress or the Senate to get this under control and extend this. I don't think Title 42 should be something that was specifically just under COVID, because this controlled our border significantly. I think overall this is good, and we're going to have to see in February if it's pushed through. I think with Gorsuch signing on that side and that dissenting view, he may sway a voice, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So getting into the border a little bit more here. This is another interesting article. This comes from Texas. We covered in one of the previous videos how the Texas National Guard has been put onto the border. They've been putting shipping containers all along the border, and it looks like it has been working. So migrant crossings plummet as Texas Guard expands barbed wire fence. Who knew it was that easy? In the space of 8 days, the barbed wire has nearly reached a second port of entry, and chain link fence anchored by sandbags extends even further. The results is that asylum seekers can no longer walk across ankle-deep water in the Rio Grande and turn themselves in, waiting for Border Patrol agents in the area. Yeah, there are sections of the border where you can literally just walk across because it's like 3 feet wide and just ankle deep. It's insane.
Yeah,
it's not hard to enforce that. Okay, the difference is vast, said First Sergeant Suzanne Ringel. The 19th, the 20th, and the 21st, we had large groups of families and individuals who wanted to come across. Now it's almost a ghost town out there. Now, this has also kind of been weaponized by the Biden administration, who has encouraged these people to show up as for asylum, essentially, and they knew that Title 42 was expiring, which I find it very odd that they knew Title 42 was expiring, because that seems very organized to me. Like, there's obviously some non-governmental organizations down there working to convince these people to come up to us, and it's dangerous for them and it's dangerous for us. I mean, there was some footage out of I believe El Paso, Texas. Actually, I'll probably bring that up here in a minute, but let me go ahead and continue here. So back to the article. She attributed the visual deterrent of the barbed wire to parked Humvees and soldiers patrolling the area with their semi-automatic rifles. Yeah, that's usually a pretty good deterrent. A nice militarized border. I wish we could have that all along the border. So small groups of people, including a family with small children, on Tuesday walked along the concrete-lined Mexican levee. Look how they try to pull at the heartstrings there, like including small children. Why are you bringing your children to another country when you know you're not going to get across? So they were looking for a place to cross, and when they couldn't find one, they walked all the way back to Juarez, Mexico. You gotta know, like, it's not safe for your children to be bringing them this far. There is too much corruption. So this is a quote from one of the migrants, illegal aliens trying to cross in. He says, there is too much corruption, too much crime in Venezuela. The Venezuelan native said while eating at a lunch pack distributed by area nonprofits. There it is. There's the NGOs, the non-government organizations. They're down there feeding them, keeping them good and healthy to cross the border again. In Mexico, there is crime too. I can't stay there. They robbed me in southern Mexico. They took my money. In the Darien Gap, Panama, they also robbed me of my documents and my cell phone. This guy talks about how he trekked through the jungle, drinking from river water, probably parasite-ridden, froze his feet off in a train. All of this coming up here to get into our country. And this should lay at the feet of the Biden administration. The human suffering that is caused by this administration, I mean, they have to be held accountable for their actions on this.
I mean, maybe not for that specifically, because that's going to happen. I mean, there's always, regardless of the administration, there's always going to be people facing hardship to try to make it across the border illegally. Maybe that burden shouldn't fall squarely on the Biden administration. I mean, obviously, their border policy has been a little lackadaisical, and it definitely could use a lot of work.
But I mean, if we had a fully secured border,
but it's unfair to be like, oh, look at this guy, had to endure all this hardship to get here. It's the Biden administration's fault. That's a little unfair. He was going to do that if Trump was in office too.
Oh, sure. But I mean, his policies in effect, have encouraged these people to make this journey. If we had a fully sealed border, they would not be encouraged to come up here. The reason this guy specifically came up here was because the Biden administration essentially said, we're accepting 75,000 refugees from Venezuela, which, I mean, when you have that small number of people, it's like, okay, 75,000, it's not a lot considering we have 250,000 to 400,000 crossing a month right now. So it's basically like a rat race to get to the border as quickly as possible. That just encourages people to make the journey. And I mean, Venezuela is very far away. So you're walking what's basically akin to across the United States just to get up here, just to get to the border and then be turned around. So there was very interesting footage from South Texas. Let me see if I can find it here. Of a woman. She had her property broken into very close to the border. All right, let's go ahead and pull up this video here. We've got new security footage from this property on the border. Shows a group of suspected illegal aliens trying to break into a ranch house in Edwards County, Texas earlier this month. The house is about 50 miles inland from the border. So this isn't on the border. This is 50 miles inland. To me, this speaks of coyotes. They were obviously up to no good. Something horrible would have happened here if there was this woman was alone in this house. 100%. Property owner tells me that this has happened before, and she has spent $13,000 upgrading security. 50 miles inland, and this has happened to her another time. I mean, we cannot have the border like this. It endangers our citizens. Let's go and watch. So we have at least 4 men. I mean, you can see that they're up to no good. There's guys on the corner keeping lookout, and they're trying to break into this house. If that woman was alone in that house, I have no doubt in my mind that she would be dead today.
I mean, yeah, we can certainly speculate. These Mexicans, or I guess I shouldn't say Mexicans, border crossers, they come from countries all over the world.
Yeah, I mean,
they must not be too incredibly familiar on Texan gun policy and how many guns there are in Texas. But this, I mean, honestly, it's frankly despicable. It's one thing to like play it's life is horrible in my home country and I'm seeking a better life in America card. Like, okay, there's some empathy in that, whatever, I understand, sort of. But you kind of lose the right to play that card as soon as you start breaking into people's homes, because then you're really just seeking asylum because life is terrible in your country. You're coming into a country you're unfamiliar with and just stealing stuff, and that's not cool.
And that's the thing. That's the thing about Americans, and especially with Texans. Texans carry guns, but if they had come up and just said, "Hey, we're hungry, we need some food," I guarantee you this woman probably would have given her not literally the shirt off of her back, but she would have probably fed them and taken them in, gotten them to a shelter or something like that. But to me, I mean, what's more concerning here is that maybe these aren't migrants, maybe these are coyotes. Maybe they're doing something even worse this far inland. I don't know, just that hits me the wrong way. But all right, let's go ahead and get into the next topic here. Enough about the border for now. I'm sure we will be revisiting it all through into February as Title 42 expires. Good ending on a white pill on this, though. Texas is at least stepping up here. Hopefully it sends a message to the other border states that they can send their National Guard down and close the damn border. Okay. Next story here. This one makes me... It makes me laugh. It makes me happy in a way. But we'll go ahead and get into it here. This is the UN. Electric cars and renewable energy is racist, says UN official. This to me, this seems like very convenient. Okay, so if you saw recently, there was some information that came out that says like, oh, electric vehicles, they come from child slave labor and all this stuff, and this only happened after Elon bought Twitter and became politically motivated, because prior to that, electric vehicles and renewable energy was like the left's grandchild. They knew that this came from lithium mines. Where do you think lithium batteries come from? Of course it's slave labor. Of course it's children there. I mean, they're complaining about this. What do you think your cell phone has in it? Almost all technology now has lithium batteries. If it's something rechargeable, more than likely it has a lithium battery in it. And that's from slave labor. So pick one or pick none. But let's go ahead and get into the article here. This is why this entire segment I just want to call climate insanity. Okay. So the United Nations rapporteur, Tendai Achiume, says that any reliance on a global capitalist framework to solve climate change perpetuates racism, which again proves that the United Nations hates us, they hate capitalism, they're un-American, and we need to pull out of the UN. Moving on. Achiume's main concern is that the procurement of materials and minerals used for renewable energy comes at the expense of racially and ethnically marginalized groups and indigenous peoples. I love that this statement, it sets forth that she believes that white people can't be poor. It's just all, it has to be colored people. It has to be racist. You can't have poor white people being taken advantage of. Okay. Governing bodies are not accounting for the environmental impact of electric vehicles and where the minerals and all of the materials are required to produce electric vehicles are coming from. Exactly what I said. To me, I mean, it just seems so convenient that all these attacks come out against Elon Musk. And then you have this. Your thoughts?
I mean, honestly, incredibly rare UNW. Let's keep pushing this narrative. That way they can just steamroll electric cars. That'd be perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how they flipped on that. The reality is that this has always been true for electric cars. This has always been the reality. And that was a reality that the left was willing to ignore until top down, new NPC update. They said, oh, actually, electric cars are racist now. So let's just keep pushing that narrative. Anytime I hear that, if I ever hear that in public, oh my God, electric cars are so racist. Like, you're right. Let's get rid of them all.
So I do differ from you, obviously. We've talked about this at length, kind of. I do like the idea of the Tesla. I think, and it's not that it's electric. I like the fact that it's a motor that has no friction in it, so it's just 0 to 120. That to me is awesome. But there is like a glaring issue here that these leftists never really realize, is that where do you think this electricity comes from to power these? If we switched every car over, our system would become unsustainable. I mean, you saw the Texas grid is I don't know, I think they showed a graph, it's like 50 megawatts out of 70 megawatts. So there's absolutely no way we can continue replacing all vehicles with electrical vehicles, for one. And two, if you're going to be on the left and you're anti-nuclear anyway, there's really no solution for it. Solar panels aren't going to do it for you unless you want to kill off all the birds. If you're unaware, solar panels from these solar farms, usually they heat up the area, and these birds are attracted to it, and they actually just cook in the sky and melt and fall. Actually, that's actually really convenient to eat.
No, it gets better. It's not necessarily that like the solar panels heat up. So I live in Nevada. We have a lot of solar energy in Nevada. They're trying to push that pretty hard. A lot of solar farms. But the solar facilities that specifically are the ones killing these birds, it gets even better than it just heats the area, but doesn't really. What happens is they're not even solar panels that are harvesting the energy. They're reflectors. They're big mirrors, and they point at a central tower. There's a black spot on that tower that gets like incredibly hot. And the idea is you run water plumbing through it, you boil water, that steam turns turbines, makes electricity. So it's not even so much that the surrounding area is just getting too inhospitable. It's that there's this like incredibly like inconceivably light and inconceivably bright and inconceivably hot like spot up on this tower, and birds are just like, that looks kind of cool, and they go fly up and die. It's great. It's kind of funny, actually.
if you saw our last episode, pray for Devin. Pray for Devin. He's a dark soul. No, I mean, I guess that solves some hunger issues, though. You don't need to hunt the birds; they just hunt themselves at that point.
They're normally not good tasting birds that do it, though. It's a little unfortunate.
It's true. We'll just give them to the homeless. It'll be fine. Okay, more climate insanity. Moving on. This one is a leftist article. This is from a left-wing source, but it makes me laugh, not because of what they said, but what I'm going to point out from here. So it's called "The Great Carbon Con is Coming to an End. No more fluffy climate goals and emission offsets. Businesses will soon be expected to show real progress." This makes me laugh so freaking hard. United Nations Climate Change Conference, which took place in November 2021. The number of FTSE 100 companies vowing to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 grew by 37% to 82%. Amazon, Apple, Ford, IBM, JP Morgan, Mars, and many others. This is hilarious to me for this point. They're just signaling. Everybody knows they're just signaling to get the sales. The same thing with the LG gay whatever stuff. They just sell the products by putting their flag on it. They're like, yay, buy my stuff, corporate America, here we go. But the fact that they don't realize that this is going to turn into taxes for them and it's going to cost them money is so hilarious. I hope these companies go under. But that being said, I guess the black pill of this particular story is this is going to cause immense damage to the economy. It is going to cost us jobs, and overall, like these climate alarmists, they don't understand what cost this is going to bring for net carbon zero, whatever the hell that even means. You know, trees grow on carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting to point out, like, it's going to cause a lot of damage to the economy. But when you look at like all these American companies specifically that have a history of taking government bailout money, it's going to affect the economy in more ways than just one. It's General Motors specifically, they've already taken a massive bailout from the government, and it's just going to happen again. All it is just money printer go burr. You're going to see like 14-15% inflation rate. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think the real inflation, and when you look at the shadow inflation, I think it's above that already. But that's a very good point. I am worried for sure that we'll see another bailout here, which gives us even more reason to learn how to ballot harvest. We must take office in 2024. We need all three. The pendulum, it will swing back, and it must swing back. Otherwise, we are all doomed. So get out there, talk to your friends. Don't be afraid to bring up politics. If they can't stand it, well, they're too dumb anyway. Back to the article. Okay. 2/3 of people, I don't know where they get these statistics here. It's not even cited, but 2/3 of people are more likely to work for a company with strong and meaningful environmental policies. Bullshit. And research by Amazon has found out that as many as 83% of investors want to invest in more sustainable startups. That to me is scary. Like that part specifically, 2/3, or at the very least they think 2/3 believe in this climate change nonsense. I mean, I feel like we're just surrounded by crazy people.
I mean, I'm not gonna like sit here and say that like the climate isn't changing, that I'm not a denier. I'm not necessarily like for the idea. If the climate is changing, I don't care.
Well,
I just don't. I'll be 100% honest. Even at like the worst apocalyptic models that the left is cranking out, we've got like 100 years. Where am I going to be in 100 years?
I always forget you're a Zoomer, so you don't. Probably. I always forget you're a Zoomer. You've sat through the indoctrination camp. So climate change is a hoax. Here's where it started.
In the single cam for the boomer mode.
Oh, single cam for the boomer mode. Here we go. In the 1950s, guess what we had? Global cooling. 25 years later, global warming. 50 years later, global cooling. Just keeps on going. They keep changing it. They go from global cooling to global warming, whichever one fits the narrative. And guess what? The Earth does not move on a circular axis. It moves on an elliptical axis, so it gets further and closer from the sun, very slightly in minute amounts. That changes over 50 years or so. That changes a significant amount of the degrees in heat. Climate is not getting hotter, it is not getting colder. It is all from skewed data. If you recall the hockey graph report, they proved that it was a scam. They actually reduced the amount of thermometers to measure the Earth's temperature to prove their data. These thermometers have been found inside of satellite dishes, reflective satellite dishes, where it's nice and warm. And one of their main points for how the temperature is rising was taken from Soviets up in Antarctica. This is why. They said, oh, it's super cold up there. You know why they said it was super cold up there on all of their data? Because every degree below zero that it was up there, they would get an extra barrel of diesel. And guess what? When you're in the Arctic, I think you want a little bit of extra diesel to keep you nice and comfy. I can get into that more. We probably will on another episode when I do more climate change madness.
Yeah,
but,
okay, cool. Jones.
But the most important, no, seriously, you can look this up. It is researchable. The most important thing here is to follow, you need to follow the money. And I'm going to get into it on this next article here because it does prove it. There's actually a lot of scientists that come out now. They would say 97% of scientists agree that climate change is real, but when you actually look at the study, it's I think it's like 60% of them say like, yeah, we might have some effect on the climate, but it's not a whole. It's not 100% what they say, right? So if you follow the money, though, these people get paid for these studies, and complete bullshit studies. And when they make these studies, they always set forth the hypothesis as the conclusion. So they will dictate the hypothesis is, oh, the Earth is warming. How can I prove this? And then that's the conclusion. They don't actually do science anymore. They find their own conclusion. They find a way to prove what they're saying is right. Your thoughts?
You are passionate about this topic, and I just don't care. If climate change is real or it's not real, I don't care either way. It doesn't affect me.
Well, so this is this next story here will prove. I mean, it will affect you, and probably more in the near term, because I mean, you say it doesn't affect you, but these leftist policies, carbon taxes, going after businesses, going after coal, going after all these things, it does affect our way of life. It increases our cost of living, it reduces our electricity. I mean, every part of our society is affected by this. You got Agenda 21 and the UN. I mean, every part of this. I mean, we talked about Bill Gates buying up all this farmland and stuff. It's all related. It all has to do with climate change. That's how they justify it. It's all under climate change. It's no longer global warming, no longer global cooling. They needed something to fit in the middle. So they went with climate change. We need something that works either which way. I mean, we're what? I think 10 years after Al Gore predicted that the world would end. Something like that. Yeah. I mean, we've all been indoctrinated in school to believe this. Carbon emissions. Trees breathe carbon dioxide to create oxygen. Your grass. Same thing. It's all sustainable. We have no effect on the environment.
Also,
except for pollution.
What if you cut all the trees down?
We have grass. Did you know
the
that
Industrial Revolution and its consequences?
It really doesn't matter because we have grass. As long as as long as we have grass, we have oxygen on the earth. I think it's something like
you heard it here first, folks. Go touch grass.
Honestly, go touch grass. I don't cite me on the exact data here, but it's something like an acre provides enough oxygen for. I think it's somewhere in 50 or 5,000 people. It's somewhere within that wide range. Feel free to Google it.
I thought like oceanic algae was like the number one producer of oxygen.
We have plenty of oxygen, and here's the interesting thing: the more oxygen we have, the better. I believe there was a study. I can't recall it right now, but essentially, the more oxygen, the bigger people get, the bigger animals get, so more food, bigger trees and everything gets. Everything gets better with more oxygen levels. So, yeah, like. Let's make more carbon dioxide. All right, do some breathing exercise with me. We're gonna make more carbon dioxide. Ready?
Just hyperventilate on camera for the next 30 seconds.
My heart. It's COVID.
That's content. That's content, baby.
All right. So this, because you specifically said it doesn't affect you, I want to get into this next article and prove that it does. A startup, and this is climate madness. A climate says it's begun releasing particles into the atmosphere in an effort to tweak the climate. These people, even though it has been debunked, they are so mad in their cult that they are going to actively change the environment. And this is dangerous. This is outright dangerous. If they did enough of this, I mean, we would see temperatures drop for sure. And this would start killing plant life and whatever in the respective area. So Make Sunsets is the company, and it's already attempting to earn revenue for geoengineering, a move to likely provoke widespread criticism. Duh. A startup claims it has launched weather balloons that may have released reflective sulfur particles in the stratosphere, potentially crossing a controversial barrier in the field of solar geoengineering. Geoengineering refers to the deliberate efforts to manipulate the climate by reflecting more sunlight back into space, mimicking a natural process that occurs in the aftermath of large volcanic eruptions. In theory, spraying sulfur and similar particles in sufficient quantities could potentially ease global warming. See, there's that phrase again. It's back to warming again. We're in the warming season.
So mad.
Oh. Little is known about the real-world effect of such deliberate interventions at large scales, but they could have dangerous side effects. No shit, Sherlock. I mean, what is it? They say if the Yellowstone volcano explodes, we'll basically be in another ice age. I mean, it's the same result. So
hopefully it does.
Hopefully we go into an ice age.
I'm right in the danger zone if it does. Hopefully it does.
Oh, you'll be carbonized, just pasted.
Yeah. Pulling and trapping in heaven.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
I would like to say about that article, cloud seeding technology has been a thing since the 80s, right?
So that's silver iodide, right? So what that specifically does is that causes the cloud to rain, a cloud burst. So that's a little different.
Nucleation site for clouds.
Yeah, so that's a little different from this.
Okay, I'm just letting you know you're going down the path here of sounding like the chemtrail conspiracy theorist.
I don't know about that.
I know about that, Mister. They're putting particles in the atmosphere. Oh my god!
This is literally.
We're gonna have to start wearing gas masks. They're putting particles in the atmosphere.
Okay, I would like to point out for the record, this is from the MIT Technology Review. This is from MIT specifically, so this is not a fringe article. They're actually the ones calling them out on this as dangerous because this company is called Make Sunsets, and they're charging people. Let's see, they're launching from Mexico because there's no oversight there in Mexico. Without any public engagement or scientific scrutiny, it's already attempting to sell cooling credits for future balloon flights that could carry larger payloads. So if you want it colder in your area, $10. There you go. The initiative is calling for oversight of geoengineering and other climate-altering technologies, whether by governments, international accords, or scientific bodies. To go ahead with the implementation at this stage is a very bad idea. This is this is from Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative. This is from Carnegie and MIT. All right, this is all backed up. You can read the article. Go look it up.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
So you are pro Mars exploration, yes or no?
I honestly don't care.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I don't care if we go to Mars. I'm not going to Mars. I like it on Earth.
I thought you were pro putting people on Mars.
No, I'm pro putting leftists on Mars.
Okay.
And then just not answering the phone anymore.
Yeah, this is true. This is very true. Because if you were pro putting people on Mars, what if this is just a dry run? What if we're trying to perfect terraforming technology here on Earth?
Okay, that is a good argument, and that is a good discussion to be had. Terraforming, I think that data and that stuff is something that should be tried on other planets and not here on Earth where we could potentially screw it up. I mean, terraforming is definitely an interesting process. That's essentially where you would manipulate the atmosphere to create an atmosphere. You'd still need water and stuff on Mars regardless, but
there's ice on the polar caps.
That's true, but how would making it colder make it more watery?
You could learn how to make it hotter.
Okay, fair enough. So again, I have no problem with terraforming. I have a problem with terraforming our planet and causing irreparable damage that is unnecessary because they believe something is happening when it's not actually happening. That's where I stand. Yeah. So let's get back into it here, though. So this, like I said, it is offering to sell $10 cooling credits for releasing 1 gram of particles into the stratosphere, enough, it asserts, to offset the warming effect of 1 ton of carbon for 1 year. I don't even know how the hell you measure that, but $10.
I'm gonna buy a cooling credit just to piss you off.
Don't do that.
I'm gonna buy it in your name too, actually.
Definitely don't do that. No, I mean, just imagine if Bill Gates or someone gets control of this technology, or Al Gore, and he's just like, yeah, there you go. When he's just like, I'm going to spend $1 million on this. I'm going to cool the earth just to prove me right. like these people have the egos the size of a barge, so I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know. To me, this is disturbing, and it's not conspiracy. Look it up. It's on MIT, mister.
It may not be a conspiracy, but you sure talk about it like it is. You get all heated and red-faced and start talking real fast.
It's because the truth, honestly, is not out there, and the problem is it's so buried under this false data and these manipulated studies, and the mainstream narrative is that climate change is real and that, oh, we're all gonna die soon. I mean, millennials, Zoomers, they all believe that this is like the worst thing that's ever gonna happen to us, and we need to. Go ahead.
Not all.
No, not all.
Matter of fact, like, majority of my friend group has diesel trucks that just cheech coal everywhere. It's so much fun. I kind of want a diesel, but diesels are expensive. But it would be really fun to just absolutely roll coal all over a Prius. That's good old boy stuff right there.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that, where they do the daily thing where they're like, turn off all your lights for the climate. I just turn on every light in my home. One of the most dangerous policies of the climate change argument here is that these policies do affect your life. Okay, eventually they will say, oh, your child is producing too much carbon. This is the basis for all population control. It starts with green energy. It's a weapon and a tool for the communists. This is how they get so much funding. You've noticed that climate change agenda people, when they get this money, where do you think it goes? It goes straight to the Democrat Party. I
mean, my thing with the climate change, I'm going to vote against it every single time, because baked into the whole like climate change cake is not allowing people to buy race car parts and build race cars anymore. The EPA is already coming after race cars. They're saying that, like, because before, even in places like California, like if it's a road vehicle that's registered, you drive it on the road, you can't have like a turbocharger, or you can't have anything that's going to increase your exhaust. Like, how would you phrase that? Anything that's going to increase how much exhaust is coming out, how much pollution it's making. Which in some sense, that's like a decent compromise. Again, give them an inch, they'll take a mile. But in some sense, it's kind of a decent compromise where if it's a track car and you're going to leave it on the racetrack, do whatever the hell you want. Like, whatever. But now the EPA is coming after everybody, even if it's a track car, even if it's not registered. You trailer it to the event, you trailer it back from the event, like it never touches a county road. You're just not going to be able to buy parts anymore. Like, period, the end.
So, like I said, though, this is a communist tool, okay? So imagine when they start coming after guns and ammo, because they don't need to come after the guns. If they just go after the ammo, they say, oh, this ammo, it causes greenhouse gases. We can't have that. We're going to have to regulate this out. That's a good, solid way for the communists to disarm us here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm going to vote against it every single time. There's separate reasons for why I don't like the climate change agenda, other than whether or not I think climate change is real. I don't care if it is either way. I don't. But I'm still going to vote against the agenda because there's other things that are kind of baked into that cake that I don't really want to see.
It's all about controlling the population. I mean, all of these policies, if you look through them, climate change ends with just restricting human behavior. You can't eat meat. Cows produce too much methane. It just spirals down all through. And as a libertarian,
use it as a launch pad, 100%.
Yeah. But I mean, as a libertarian, like, you look at some of these policies, I'm sure you can't say, oh, this is a good idea. Let me regulate people's meat. Let them eat the bugs.
Yeah, that, and they're talking about like gas rationing and paying a like dollar per mile tax on whatever driving you do. I commute a lot. I drive almost 60 miles a day. Like, just under. It's like 58 miles a day is my commute. If they start charging a mile tax, I put a lot of miles on my vehicle in a year. That's going to be a devastating tax, depending on what that tax rate is. That's horse shit.
Oh, they have all sorts of taxes that they have planned to curb climate change. So, but yeah.
And the part about this that frustrates me is like, no matter kind of where you sit on this, the individual does not make a difference. You and I do not make the carbon footprint that these multinational billion-dollar companies do. Like, the individual just does not matter. Why don't we just leave everybody else alone? Or China.
China does not respect any of these of their
granted, we
climate
can't
agenda.
Exactly legislate over China.
Well, actually,
taxes and tariffs are a thing, but we can't exactly like write a rule into law, like pass a law that says, you know, China has to stop burning coal. Like, that's not going to work.
So this is the interesting thing. They signed some UN initiative, China did, with all of us, and our initiative promise was basically like, yeah, we'll cut our carbon emissions by 2030 to half. China's was basically like, yeah, we're going to ramp up about 800% and then we'll cut that in half. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. It's like, you look at China, they're getting this industrial revolution now, and they're just pumping out technology, stealing our technology, and we're just cutting ourselves right at the ankle, just hamstringing ourselves as a country because of these policies.
Yeah, the diesel soot's another thing too. Oh my God, you're polluting the environment. Like, diesel soot is heavier than air. You want to know what diesel soot is? It's carbon. It's unburnt fuel. That unburnt fuel and that carbon goes directly back into the soil. It settles after about like 20 minutes. If you stick around long enough after a truck rolls coal, it all goes back down into the soil. You know what happens then? The plants consume it. And the plants do that, and then they turn it into oxygen. Crazy concept, I know.
So you're saying the diesel energy, the diesel engine is renewable energy, and we need more diesel engines?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go. Diesel ultimately, like, that was another thing that, like, leftists really hate diesel engines, but diesel engines are, as far as internal combustion engines go, some of the most efficient engines we have available currently.
That's why we use them for mass trucking. That's why they deliver our groceries.
It's trucking and also shipping. Shipping is all diesel. Well, technically it's fuel oil, but it's a diesel combustion process. They are some of the most thermal efficient engines we have available to us currently. There's a company that's researching a 3-cylinder opposed piston turbocharged and supercharged engine that is reaching like 30% thermodynamic efficiency ranges, which is absolutely insane for an internal combustion engine. Gasoline engines are at like 7%, 8%. So that means that, like, okay, say a gallon of gasoline has X amount of energy. You can look it up. I don't know off the top of my head how much. Only like 7% of that energy that in the gasoline itself is being converted directly to motion. So you have heat loss, engines make sound, that's energy loss. And then you have like drivetrain loss, friction loss. Like, gasoline engines are pretty inefficient. And diesel, even just like normal consumer diesels, not even these like super high tech engines that are coming out, just like your average everyday Cummins inline 6 turbo diesel has like a 17% thermodynamic efficiency rating. So they are so much more efficient than gasoline engines, and they have been since their inception. That was one of Rudolf Diesel's things, that when he was trying to market his product, he was like, yeah, look at this engine. It's super efficient. And then they got like this really like bad stigma. Oh, they're noisy. They make smoke. Like, these obviously can't be good. And it's like, you fucking idiots. These engines are the best we have on the market. We should absolutely, if you're so worried about the climate, we should be making diesel vehicles. We should be, I know Volkswagen gets a lot of crap about their emissions standards. But the TDI engines are some of the most efficient in passenger vehicles. They get like 54 miles to the gallon. So this Passat, 4-door sedan, get like 54 miles to the gallon. Like, we should be using these. Like, the technology is here. You guys just don't like it.
Speaking of Zoomers and percentages, let's go get into this next story. I got lost in that too, don't worry. Almost 40% of students identify as LG, gay, homosexual, whatever, at liberal arts colleges, says the survey. This is terrifying. Liberal arts colleges are the least politically diverse. Many have almost no conservatives and thus very low viewpoint diversity. But they have high sexual diversity at nearly 40% homosexual. The analyzed data also reveals that overall 23% of U.S. college students identify as homosexual, a number similar to a Gallup poll which found 20.8% of Generation Z identified as LGBT in February of this year. So I know you've said it before that this Zoomer generation is the most conservative ever, or at least you thought so at one point.
You're putting words in the mouth here, man.
All right, fair enough. But this terrifies me. I mean,
it shouldn't. Have you ever stepped foot on a college campus?
What do you mean?
This statistic will surprise nobody that has ever stepped foot on a college campus.
It doesn't surprise me. It scares me because
fair enough.
From an extinction level for our population is 100% going to decline if this many people identify as homosexual. There is something going on here. There has to be. For 20.8% of Generation Z and 40% of these college kids. And the worst and scariest part of this is these people are going to grow up and they're going to be in office. They're going to be running these corporations and businesses. You think it's bad now? If we don't do something soon, it's going to be a whole lot worse.
They won't be able to spread it to their children, though.
They'll be able to spread it to ours.
Not if you don't let them.
Well, right. Take your kids out of public school. I know I say it every single episode. Take your kids out of public school. Don't let them educate your kids. I don't know. This is just such a disturbing trend, and you know it's because of popularity that most of these kids come out because they get rewards and stuff. But the article continues here. The trend towards homosexual identification among young people, which has seen a threefold expansion since 2008, 300% increase from 2008. I want to go back to 2008. That said, those who identify as very
the
liberal,
economic recession was so great.
I mean, we're about to be in another one. We're literally in one now. Groceries are like $500. Honestly, it wasn't that bad compared to this one. Oh, that said, those who identify as very liberal. I
was 6.
Yeah, you were 6. Man, the cost of a cookie is just rising like crazy. That
costs me like $4 now. It's crazy.
Yeah, $4 for some chicken tendies. That said, those who identify as very liberal are substantially more likely to say they are homosexual, and white left-wing activists are extremely likely to do so, with some 70% of very liberal women who support shouting down offensive speakers identifying as homosexual.
People are insufferable. It's not even just the fact that they're like LGBTQ, whatever. Before this gets clipped and shipped and I get canceled for the rest of my life,
don't care.
It's not even that. Well, somebody might. It's not even that they're gay. These people are just insufferable, frankly. Like, these are the worst people to be around.
They are, and there has to be a common link here, and it's usually mental derangement. It's usually they were molested when they were young, or they had no father in their life. They were raised by a single mother. Those are the two most common links for this to happen to them. They were either, like I said, molested or something by a trusted adult, and it breaks their brain, and then they go down these crazy tracks. It's either drugs or homosexuality, and it doesn't help that the government and the schools are encouraging it and providing positive reinforcement when they identify as homosexual. Your thoughts? Yeah,
I mean, I can't really speak to the whole like positive reinforcement thing. I didn't see it crazy a lot in high school. Never went to college.
Well, you're in Nevada,
and I'm also I grew up in a fairly rural area. I don't know. As far as like my perspective on how like the system encourages this, I can't really speak too much to that. I kind of grew up in the wrong area to be able to kind of have an opinion about that. But I mean, I could definitely see how that could impact the statistics here. But
just go look at California.
I tend to not. I try to avoid that place like the plague, actually.
Fair enough. So this is what they end up turning into, though. Got a short little video here.
You know how easy it is? It's interesting how little cis people actually know about biological sex. Like, your chromosomes dictate everything, and you'll never be a real boy or a real girl. Do you know how easy it is to completely change your body with hormones? I grew a penis within my first month of being on testosterone. I started having full-blown boy puberty around month 3 or 4. Trans women can grow breasts, exactly like cis women can. Trans women can lactate. Everything you think you know about how bodies
That milk is 100% spoiled.
are set in stone and can't be changed, you're literally just wrong.
She grew a penis.
Mm.
This lady's, whatever you want to call this thing,
Deranged.
is deranged, clearly insane. We need mental institutions. We need to stop giving hormones to people. What are we doing to our society? This is so concerning. And that milk is 100% spoiled. I don't even know where to go from that. That's just highly disturbing. And I hate to make you guys burn out your retinas here with this next picture, but I had to see it, so you're gonna have to see it too. This will be the final little bit of the show here. It's gotten a little weird, but it's about to get a whole lot weirder. So this is Abercrombie and Fitch, which has put them this on their main page. And if this wasn't disgusting enough, here you go. Yeah, that's not showing very well, but that is a man in women's lingerie, and armpit hair, and a 5 o'clock shadow. I don't even know what this is, other than highly disturbing, and I need to vomit now. So thank you guys so much for watching. I've been your host, Alexander Graves, the constitutional conservative of the night. This is my half-ass libertarian co-host, Devin Adler. Please support please follow us on Twitter at America Wake Up. And please, again, sorry for showing this again, but please, if you would like to support our content, buymeacoffee.com/wakeup. Greatly appreciate it. Helps to fund our work here, and continues to keep us motivated and caffeinated. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching. Good night, stay safe, and have a happy holiday.
So was the supermarket just out of tinfoil? Is that why we don't have a hat on tonight, or what are we doing here?
I don't like you.
Mm.